is covered in today's dailies in terms of news making headlines. This is what you can expect. A lot to do with the political developments in the country, and we'll get to that shortly. Just taking a look at some of the human interest stories covered in today's dailies. We talked about the Kerugoya brothers and the investigations process so far. 6 police officers set to be arraigned under capital offense charges related to murder of those 2 brothers. But let's talk about an interesting development right here, centered on child trafficking in Nakuru, specifically Kuresoi, where a 31-year-old man turned his wife over to the authorities for reportedly lying about her pregnancy. For 9 months, 31-year-old Wesley Rono acted feigned ignorance as his 25-year-old wife, Patricia, faked a pregnancy. When Patricia finally came home cuddling a bouncing baby in her arms, Rono finally decided to end his wife's deception by calling the police. Here's KTN's Elvis Kosgei with the drama. Take a look.
31-year-old Wesley Rono played along and provided everything Patricia asked for during the 9-month fake pregnancy period.
Si anaenda anasema kila siku anaenda check up Kericho. Ametea pesa, aenda, anarudi. Anaenda, anarudi.
On August 8th, the purported due date, his wife, 25-year-old Patricia, asked him for money to go to deliver at Kericho County Hospital's maternity wing.
Alikuwa anaweka nguo. Sasa nikagundua peke yangu. Nikasema wacha nigundue hii siri. Niangalie upipi mpaka hii siri itoke peke yake. Juu nikiambia hii ni nguo atayasaepa.
The couple from Ogilgain, Kuresoi North constituency, Nakuru County, had remained childless for 5 years, forcing the woman to attempt to pull the stand, which has now not only landed her in trouble, but left her marriage hanging by a thread.
Wakati nafika nyumbani jioni, amefika. Anakaa kama mgonjwa. Angalia. Huyu mtoto ni siku 4 kweli. Mtoto alikuwa ni mwezi mmoja. Pigia mandugu zangu jioni hiyo. Asubuhi akakuja. Nikamwambia unachua hii ni police case. Akasema si mtoto ni yangu. Nikamwambia kwa nini mtoto siku 4 anakunywa maziwa ya ng'ombe? Akasema sawa, tutaenda kwa polisi.
Kuja tu mpaka Kitororo Center, nikakuja kuulizia mama mwenye anaitwa Esther daktari anaishi wapi hapa. Nikaelekeshwa nikaambiwa sasa ukifika hiyo serial ya chai ni hapo nyuma. Ndio nikakuja mpaka hapa nikamtungaongea naye, nikamwambia nimekaa sana bila mtoto na ninahitaji mtoto. Kaniambia haina shida, nitakutafutia mtoto iko. Na nitakupea bora tu tuelewane na pesa. Sasa nikamwambia na mimi sina pesa, unahitaji ngapi? Akaniambia ni 50k. Nikamwambia sina pesa, lakini tutafanya hivi, niko na chai, acha niuze chai ndio nikupe pesa.
Since she did not have money, the baby seller agreed to exchange the baby with seedlings worth 26,000 Kenya shillings.
Alikuwa ameniambia mtoto mwenye niko naye ni ya 3 weeks. Lakini alimpea hiyo mtoto ya 3 weeks, tukaenda kukaa na yeye 1 week. Sasa hii yako 1 month.
Patricia confessed that she could not bear a child and that the baby, now in the custody of Kericho police gender officers, was not a biological child.
Sikuwa nataka niambia ati ninunue mtoto nimue. Nilikuwa nataka nimlee, alafu yeye nimwachie yeye aoe, alee hata yake mimi nilee yangu. Nikiendelea kufanya nini? Nikiendelea kutafuta mtoto.
The police traced the suspected child trafficker's cell phone to the county of Kisii. Her hostile daughter, who was at home, did not want to be questioned.
Nilifika jana, sikumpata mtu jana na leo.
Si tumesema tunaenda na wewe. Kwa nini unafikiria tunapagini? Kama tumesema ama unaona utatushinda?
Hakuna chochote chenye.
Tunaenda na wewe.
Siende.
Tutaona.
Akisiende.
Elvis Kosgei, KTN News.
So it's an unfortunate story right there, showing some of the extremes people might go in terms of getting a child. And as I mentioned, it's on page 3 of the Standard. Let's talk about this just briefly, Gakuya. It shows there's an issue of child trafficking in the country. This is one of the cases that has been highlighted. Well, what say you, as you're watching that story, what stood out for you?
Rogers, what confirms through that story is that it's now clear that, in fact, this child trafficking is real. And it is a business as usual. That's what it wants to confirm. Because that lady from Kuresoi, she didn't went very far to look for the baby. And actually, it's like she just moved within her surrounding, and she was able to book a baby that was only for 3 weeks. Then it tells you that there is that kind of dragnet, which is involving, has to involve either nurses or doctors and outsiders. Because there's no way that actually you can get a baby of 3 weeks if you are not getting that baby from a hospital. Mm-hmm. And this tells you that actually in our hospitals, we are having hospitals now that are dens of traffickers. And that is what is making us worry too much. Because now, suppose that at what point does these things occur? It tells you that when a woman is on a pain of labor, and after delivering, she is not very sure to get her little baby after she recovers back. Because you don't know, the nurse that you are, who is handling you, whether she's part of the dragnet or not. Mm-hmm. Because there is no any other chance that you can be able to get a baby except from that situation. Or number two, you can only get a baby from another woman who does not need to have a baby, who gets birth of a baby and then sells that baby. But I don't think that is too easy. The easy route is the other route of the hospital, where that particular dragnet seems to be working very well and very connected. And this is a very worrying situation in our midst, that actually this business now is real. This has been happening here in Nairobi, around our maternity here. Okay. But surely it has toned down. But it has now confirmed that still it is working. And it's very unfortunate is that we have realized that this dragnet is now even in going to a notch higher, even to get involved to those children that are now even at the age of 10 and beyond. Mm-hmm. Then tells you that actually this market is very high. Okay. And I think what we can do for now, because you have realized the pain of this particular lady of Kuresoi. Actually, if Rogers, you can check this very well. It is an issue to do with what we call comfortability in her marriage. Because out of the marriage for 5 good years without starting a child, then that particular lady was not sure whether she will still survive in that marriage. Okay. But she was just trying to find a way on how she can connect her marriage and farm her marriage. But unfortunately, his husband was very wise and sharp because he never went to that particular deception route. Okay. And actually, he did that particular dragnet. And I would say, men, wake up. Because actually, you will be duped in many, many angles. Just be sharp, like that fellow of Kuresoi. Exactly, and he even took the extra effort to call the police because he would have decided to cover it up. So, Manyasi, I know this is not your forte, so perhaps as you add your voice to this, let's couple up with the latest story covered on page 7 of the Daily Nation. Parents rue burden of new curriculum with their complaints against the costly activities under the CBC. We've definitely seen some parents from grade 1 to grade 4 complain of the number of books they have to buy, wondering if this is totally applicable. Maybe they're comparing it to the old 844 syllabus where even one book was enough, where you'd share amongst the class. But there's a question right here by the Nairobi CEC for Education. Why aren't village public schools having that complaint? This is a Nairobi problem, an academic problem. This is a problem of the middle class who do not want to look like they're broke. Hence why we're buying books in huge numbers. Well, what say you about this? Add your voice kindly.
Jesse, I have, on this CBC business, I have added my voice on it many times before. And one of the things that was very obvious about the CBC system was the burden of involvement of the parent. When the CEC Nairobi says that the complaints are not from the rural areas, it's because even if a child went home in the rural area, for example, to talk to their mother about something that the mother does not even understand, it's neither here nor there. So they make do with what is there. the requirements under CBC are supposed to be very involving for the parent and guardian. How that is supposed to work is that the child is supposed to go home and undertake homework with the parent or the guardian. Now, the type of homework that we are talking about are things like paper cuttings, are things like paintings, are things like drawings, are things like going and taking a picture of a pharmacy and coming to upload the same. Those are very complicated things that the CBC system expects. And I remember there's a time we had a discussion with I think it was KICD, and they were denying the same. But you see, there's evidence that that is what is expected. And so because of that, you will expect that the things that are supposed to be purchased for purposes of making sure that the child actually is taken through the CBC system will also meant also to go up. What the worry that I have as a person on the CBC curriculum is then this. For those kids who are not doing what the CBC system requires, and for those kids who parents are now complaining that there are too many things that they need to do and are supposed to get involved, when it comes to equality in terms of education, what is it that we are doing to those kids then who have no systems that support them, who have no parents and guardians that support them, who cannot buy anything for those kids, and therefore they're supposed to pull through the system, versus the other kids who are supposed to get a lot of support mechanisms around them for them to go through their system. So ultimately, then, are we creating equality or inequality in the system? Now, it's too early for me to say that I'm faulting that system, but at the same time, it's a reality check that we need to start having as a conversation for the country to start looking at what is it that we are doing to the kids who either have, or the ones that you're calling for the middle class, and the majority of the ones who are either in formal settlements or in the rural areas, then who might not have access to some of these materials that then are required. Those are the conversations that we need to have as a country to be able to know whether the system that we have introduced is going to create equality or inequality.
Exactly. We can't afford to leave anyone behind because it's all to do with quality education. So this is a discussion that is ongoing, but more details on page 7 of the Daily Nation. Kasim, I don't know if this caught your attention just yesterday. The front page of the Daily Nation was centered on the costly fuel in Nairobi as compared to Nakuru in Rift Valley and Mombasa, where it actually starts the journey. So on page 8 of the Daily Nation, KPC blamed for costly fuel in Nairobi. Usually talk so passionately about the energy cost in the country. I don't know if you add your voice to this, because according to EPRA, they say fuel is cheaper in Nakuru because petroleum products in Nairobi incur additional cost of storage, and they push the blame to the KPC, the Kenya Pipeline Company. But what say you about this? Because I know Mombasa, I'm sure you enjoy fuel at a cheaper rate as compared to Nairobi. Kasim, are you still with us? Okay, challenges to do with the network. We'll definitely try and establish that since he's joining us from Lamu. Many thanks for that. Allow us to shift focus right now to the latest political developments in the country. And I'll begin with the state of coalitions right now, because it seems there's so much focus around the One Kenya Alliance meeting. They're holding crucial talks all to do with coalition building in the country. On the front page of The Standard, the decisive moment for One Kenya Alliance in crucial talks, all to do with coalition building. And the Daily Nation, politics of alliances. The Raila factor splits One Kenya Alliance chiefs. So this is what you can expect on the front page. But let's have that particular story, taking a look at the history of coalitions in the country, with sharp focus on One Kenya Alliance having gone a step ahead to perhaps prepare a roadmap towards the 2022 election in terms of their manifesto and, of course, the elephant in the room, the presidential flag bearer. Let's take a look at this particular story.
In less than 12 months, Kenyans will be heading to the polls. Political figures are now positioning themselves for State House through alliances and coalitions. Since the year 2002, at least 4 major coalitions have been crafted and used in this journey. The National Rainbow Coalition, NAC, that ushered in retired President Mwai Kibaki in 2002, Coalition for Reform and Democracy, CORD, in 2013, Jubilee Coalition and the National Super Alliance, NASA, in 2017.
Hiyo NASA kazi yake ilikwisha, lakini huko mbele tutakuja pamoja.
Muungano wetu uko tayari. Muungano wetu ni wa Wakenya wote. So we don't need any alliance, we don't need any coalition. Hii miungano inaendeshwa na watu wenye fikra ya ukabila.
The Jubilee Party, which has enjoyed a massive support of the ODM party since the handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta and ODM leader Raila Odinga, is keen on returning the favor in 2022. Talks are abound, and meeting after meeting with this end in mind have been held.
Jubilee sasa, we are rolling out, and we're going to have town hall meetings, we're going to have grassroots elections, we're going to have structures on the ground, because we want that party to come into coalition with ODM.
In 2013, to the run-up towards 2013 election, TNA and URP, our famous Afraha meeting, was on the 4th of December 2012 for an election that was in March. 4 months.
However, coalitions have had a myriad of challenges, including choosing a presidential candidate to fly the coalition's flag. Nairobi Senator Johnson Sakaja, who was the then chairman of the National Alliance TNA, explains the intrigues before President Uhuru Kenyatta was fronted for the 2013 general election.
It was very difficult for William Ruto to go to tell his people that, you know what, I might have to team up with so-and-so and I will not be the candidate. Yet your people believe in you, because you find in many places their world begins and ends where they are. First, start telling your people there's a possibility that you will not be the candidate.
Political pundits have argued that it is impossible to form a government in Kenya without a coalition of political parties. But what is the reason behind this?
There is no one candidate or one political party that can get a 50% plus one to form an administration.
Political pundits, however, argue that the considerations and the reasons for parties to come together should be on ideologies and beliefs.
We don't have strong foundational parties that can establish some type of financial stability in this country.
Unfortunately, our parties still remain very tribal. And so we brought those parties together. And that time our slogan, I remember that time I was leading the strategy team, was Tuko Pamoja. And we translated it to all languages. Yeah, you go to Central and tell them Tuhamwe. You go to Western, you say Kulialala. You go to Kalenjin and you say Kimiki Bagenge. The Maasai is Kitite Nebo.
And with the political activities just settling in, the 2022 race is promising to be the toughest yet in Kenya's political history. Already there are signs that it will be a two-horse race between DP Ruto and one of the former NASA principals who are now coalescing under One Kenya Alliance.
It is UDA versus any other structure that will format itself a year to the elections.
When you say that you are a strong candidate, you must have 3 important things. Number 1, numbers. Number 2, you have resources. Number 3, you have a strategy.
However, politics is the art of possibility, and a third force may just be in the works. Emmanuel To, KTN News, Nairobi.
Well, thanks, Emmanuel To, for that. Still in studio, I'm joined by James Gakuya, Embakasi North Member of Parliament, via way of Zoom, Kasim Tandaza, the Member of Parliament of Matuga constituency, and from our City Centre studios, Alex Manyasi, who's a governance expert. I'd like to begin with the One Kenya Alliance member. I believe we have you back on the line, Kasim. Good news. Okay, I understand we've lost him. So let's begin with Gakuya. I'm sure you're not privy to the discussions ongoing within that One Kenya Alliance strategic meeting, but this is not new to Kenya. We've seen from that story, coalitions have been a long time coming, and they've come in different shapes, from NAC all the way to CORD, and right now One Kenya Alliance. What say you about these preparations? Is it too early? Because others might argue it's better to hold your cards closer to your chest, even as we await the months to draw closer.
Rogers, It is not early at all. And I would say that, in fact, the new coming up coalitions are very timely. The reason is that 1 year to an election is very short. And you may be caught unprepared if you fail to put all your cards close. So at this particular time, what we are witnessing is quick releases of trying to come together, unite, and at least bring one flag bearer who can be able to face William Ruto come 2022. And this is, I can tell you, is a business that it seems to be a very hot business. You have seen it in Mombasa, and having seen the head of state hosting that kind of brigade together, then there is a big will from his side to make a unity team where there can be what we call a big coalition that will be able to wrestle with William Ruto come 22. And to myself, let me say, the only area that I'm finding quite clear is one element where this is OCA, which is One Kenya. One Kenya has to have to get themselves in a closed room, iron themselves. First of all, they must also prepare to also get their own way of how to negotiate with Raila Odinga if they have to get to the camp of Raila Odinga. One is that they must agree, is it Kaloso who will still carry the flag of deputy president if the game of BBI is not going to be in the picture. Because if that game of the BBI is not good in the picture, then we are heading to have an election with only a president with his running mate. And then the gray areas are, yes, will he be Mudavadi or will he be Kalonzo Musyoka, who will now carry the tag? And therefore, that is the only area that I'm finding it gray, because they may not agree who will be. But if they can agree from that particular part, then it will be a smooth way going forward.
Yeah, but in the Ruto's camp, allow me to ask you, in Ruto's camp, aren't you worried about this? Because it's not too often that you see an incumbent president working with the opposition closely or leaning towards, and perhaps even showing signs that this is preferred than my deputy. But what say you? Aren't you worried, especially when we hear talk of going it alone?
Politics is a strategy, and I am telling you, every single contender must play his cards and must play his cards very, very wisely, because failure to that, it will ruin you. And in this particular case, I would say, it does not mean that William Ruto is not willing to have what we call coalitions, but he's not going to have coalition of those parties. He will have coalitions with leaders that comes from different regions. Like, for example, he has not yet picked a candidate or his running mate. Wherever you pick his running mate from, that will be a coalition, because that candidate is a candidate who must also be having a pull behind. Then, from there, I think his strategy is that he must learn what these other coalitions are heading to. At some point, they may collapse or they materialize. If they can collapse, I am sure that he will be able to sweep out from it. And therefore, that is his wisdom. And therefore, he must play his card on that particular way that actually, if there is a break anywhere, he will harvest out of that. And therefore, I would say that it is not early for him to declare even his running mate. Let us move until we close the boat. And there could be a battle within his part if there will be another contender with his party. And in case there is one, obviously we must go what we call democratic route of nomination. But at this particular point in time, I have not seen anybody interested to compete with him. And therefore, gives him still a lead ahead. But there is still fires in Mount Kenya region. We have seen, we have a group like Madakarwa, Kinjori, and Moses Kuria. And I'm telling you, democracy actually allows them to play their card. Only what I would say is that, as from Mount Kenya region, we are very much aware that actually we have our past experiences. And we know what happens when you have small parties pulling aside. Because those small parties, what they will do, they will just pull from your basket, and they will pull from the basket of the UDA. So ask what we shall do. And I would like to be very clear here, that if they feel that actually they must come with their amorphous small parties, then let them prepare to go to an election and feel their presidential candidate. Let us meet with them as opposition down there. But you cannot purport to tell us you want to be part of us, but you want to give us a very hard and difficult platform down there, and then you want us to tell the public that you are working with us. That cannot work.
But isn't that the game? Raising your political stakes, so at the end of the day, you have a space at the table in terms of negotiating?
This I can tell you. Democratically, we are saying they are free to have their parties, but they take their journey, take their roadmap on their own.
All right.
And what we can do, if they are good enough to get something at the end of the day, we can make correction after.
All right. So let me bring in Kasim Tandaza. As you add your voice to what Gakui has just mentioned, perhaps you're privy to sources of what we can expect in terms of the One Kenya Alliance meeting going forward. We expect them to give us their strategy. Perhaps talk to us about this. Were you present during the meeting?
Thank you, Jesse. As we had initially said, I should be in Naivasha. I took a flight yesterday skyward, which mid-air, one of the engine failed. Thank God we came back and landed safely at Anda Airport. So that is why I'm here. But in a few hours' time, I should be headed to Nairobi and hopefully to Naivasha. Yes, I'm privy to some of the discussion. It's a culmination of other meetings which have been held before. As the deputy party leader of NC, I certainly have a bit of information what is going on, where we are coming from, where we are, and where we want to be come August 9, 2022. That is next year.
So what key issues stood out?
Yes. Yes, Jesse?
Just continue. I'm curious, what key issues stood out during the meeting?
Well, we've been having a technical team, and this is in public domain, that presented several papers before the different constituent parties of One Kenya Alliance. We've looked at different scenarios. I can tell you for sure of what happens if we were to nominate one presidential candidate, including a scenario of what would happen if all presidential candidates were to stand. And if I mean all, not just about One Kenya Alliance, but we are looking at all the others who have shown interest in going for the presidential seat. And all those scenarios are not. And after that, then, the issue is how do we turn those scenarios into a working document and a winning document that matters. And I think that is where I can tell you for sure, there is nothing like announcing a flag bearer One Kenya Alliance. This one I can tell you tomorrow. Because it is not a priority. And why is it not a priority? I've always said, and I'm saying this from a point of knowledge, One Kenya Alliance is not a one closed shop. It's not about the core principles that we have got now. It's about Kenyans at large. There are so many other people out there who are bound to join One Kenya Alliance, who are joining One Kenya Alliance. Other parties, other regions, it is a fact. And Mheshimiwa Honorable Gakuya cannot come out here and say we are moving out of regional politics, tribal politics. He himself, I'm really surprised that though he's a member of parliament for constituency in Nairobi, he still refers himself as us in Mount Kenya. I'm not quite sure if Embakasi is in Mount Kenya, that is sure. But you can see how deeply rooted the mentality of tribal, the mentality of region. Even a leader representing a whole constituency, which I believe is ethnic in Nairobi, still refers to him as us in Mount Kenya. Yet, so this is a fact. That is the way to come. It put a challenge here going forward. I'm yet to see if the deputy president will go up to the general election in 2022 without some alliances. If he doesn't win, I can tell them for sure he can't win.
Okay. Since we're talking about alliances, Kasim, allow me to ask,
Yes.
Because this is of sharp focus to Kenyans. And on the front page of the Daily Nation, they question the Raila factor that seems to be splitting the One Kenya Alliance chiefs. So is there a general agreement on the modus operandi that will be taken while working with the ODM party leader, bearing in mind the deficit of trust that has been there before, even as various leaders, including Musalia Mudavadi, have stood their ground and said, if we're to support, if such an instant is to happen, there should be tough conditions. What say you about this?
Jesse, we have all the ingredients right now to get it right, like in the previous coalitions. Remember, since the advent of the ushering, not multipartyism, but since 2002, when we had a different regime coming in, we've always gone to an election alliance. The only thing that has been broken, according to me, with those alliances is that they are more of reactionary or emotionally so much close to the date of the general election. Now we are talking about a whole 1 year. Remember, over 1 year, we've been discussing this prior to August 2020. That means we had a whole 1 year. I'm quite confident this time we are going to get it right because as we are doing in Kenya, like we are discussing about manifesto, which never happened in the previous answer. It was a question of reacting, we are going to lose, how do we get the power? But now we are talking about some technical committee went down into discussing policies, discussing economic blueprints, merging those different manifestos from different parties, so that we are saying going forward we'll be talking about issues, not just who is going to be the third PRP, because it's really fixed waiting with a better brain to see now who will come out of One Kenya Alliance. But I can tell you for sure, Kenyans, hold your horses. It is not a priority now. We are looking at how we can come up with a document in terms of policy, in terms of strategies of researching this economy in the country, because that is what, of course, the issue of a peaceful general election, how it is to be conducted, is on card. But for now, Kenyans, we have all the time. We need the leaders who are going to be ready to come Kenya, irrespective of tribe, irrespective of where it comes from, because that is what the country is expecting the next leadership to bring develop equally, not to imagine like other areas. So those are some of the issues that are actually
all right.
But going forward, One Kenya will be going for the presidency in whichever format, whether through one presidential candidate or through another scenario. But the idea is to get this Kenya work for all Kenyans.
Okay, we'll get to talk about the elephant in the room, picking a presidential candidate. But Manyasi, from where you sit, Kenyans are told to hold on to their horses. The strategy is still being cooked. But speaking of horses, do you envision a united opposition when it comes to the 2022 general election? Because we've had talks of a 2-horse, 3-horse race. But as you do that, what do you think is the biggest challenge for One Kenya Alliance going forward?
Jesse, it also depends with what you mean by opposition, because at this point I think William Ruto excuse me, will squarely be in the opposition. The One Kenya Alliance will then be in the opposition. Maybe the Raila Odinga group then will be the one in government. But the biggest challenge for One Kenya Alliance will definitely be for them to stick together. I say that because that is the only strength that they have in terms of maintaining their being together, for them to then pose a formidable group that will then be of consequence either to William Ruto or Raila Odinga. And as long as One Kenya Alliance is stuck together, Raila Odinga's group is in a lot of problems in terms of sorry, the ability to actually move forward. But on the other hand, I think the William Ruto camp will obviously be happier if the One Kenya Alliance was to disintegrate. because they will know that the disintegration of One Kenya Alliance then will mean that you have another ODM on the other side with Raila Odinga, and therefore by extension then would mean that the William Ruto camp will have an easier sailing in terms of looking at pulling themselves as the voice of the people. So the biggest challenge, like we have said many times, is just ensuring that One Kenya Alliance actually sticks together. And just to say at this point in time that any split on One Kenya Alliance, for example, if one of them was to join William Ruto, then the die for Raila Odinga will be cast. If one of them, all of them, for example, were to team up with Raila Odinga, then the William Ruto camp will have a lot of challenges in terms of ensuring that they actually campaign and win the election in the first round. So whichever way you look at it, One Kenya Alliance, the only fate they have is for them to stick together, is for them to move together, is for them to finish together. That is the only way. In terms of picking presidential candidates, I think that will be determined a lot by many other factors. That will be determined by whether Raila Odinga will be running or not.
Okay.
That will be determined by whom William Ruto is speaking as deputy president. That will be determined by themselves in terms of the resource base, in terms of the appeal to the Kenyan citizen. If you remember, one of the reasons why Kibaki Tosha happened was because William Ruto, was because Uhuru Kenyatta was running for president, and therefore it was a tribal card on one end. And so it will be, for them to pick a presidential candidate at this point in time, I think is a bit premature. But in the next 3-4 months, they will need to have settled on someone.
Okay, Manyasi, just briefly, add your voice to the ongoing discussion about the IEBC chairperson, Wafula Chebukati. Just yesterday, some members of parliament allied to One Kenya Alliance called out ODM, the legislators on that particular side, over the calls to oust the IEBC chair. Do you read malice in the move?
There has been talk that the group, especially the one that is represented by Raila Odinga and others, not to be trusting Chebukati 100%. That has been there in the works for some time. What is disappointing for me is that ODM has technically been in government for some time now, and the expectation about changing the face of IEBC, this discussion has been going on for more than 2 years. And so if any changes were supposed to be proposed to IEBC, especially changing the chair of IEBC, that should have happened a long time ago. Just less than a year to the next election, I think in my view it would be a bit dangerous to start imagining that you want to change the chair of IEBC. I say that because the Kriegler report said that we have had challenges, unless, of course, the intention is to create confusion in IEBC and therefore create chaos in the election process, and therefore then determine an election that you have created chaos through. Then I do not think that it's the right time at this point in time to start thinking about changing the chair of IEBC when you know that you have just added 3 new commissioners to the commission. And the secretariat is not even fully formed. So at the end of the day, I think it's important for continuity and for purposes of making sure that IEBC actually works. At this point, I'm talking in terms of looking at proper, good corporate governance. You cannot, at this point in time, then start imagining that you want to make radical changes to IEBC. You will create chaos.
Okay, the timing is suspicious from where you sit. All right, allow us to take a short break. When we come back, we'll add the voice of James Gakuya and Kasim Tandaza to the ongoing discourse, all centered on the countdown to 2022 general election. One Kenya Alliance still meeting today, and we expect them to unveil the roadmap to the 2022 general election. But Raila Odinga is also making moves, as well as Deputy President William Ruto. This and much more after the break. Stay with us.
This is KTN News. Fried ginger has ginger oil, which is good for a healthy living lifestyle. It combines wonderfully on salads, stir-fries, when basted on roasted meat or simply sprinkled on your favorite dish. Available in 250 ml, 500 ml and 1 liter.
In the Sustainable Development Goals, we are saying we should leave no one behind and start with the farthest first.
Innovation is a key part of the recovery process.
We set up the first assistive tech accelerator in Africa to support innovators who are building technology to support persons living with disability.
Anybody who is interested in trying a person with disability in employment, contact us.
We work like thrice as hard. We have to remember that there's 15% of the population that's being left out if your products and services are not accessible.
For 1 month, every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m., join the conversation on KTN News and Standard Group platforms.
Area code is back, and this time we are on the road.
We have the northern white rhinos and the southern white rhinos.
What do we do about power outages? What do we do about shortage of water?
We moved to Thika because we needed to do our own fruit extraction.
As I come to a city, town, urban, and even rural center near you.
Nanyuki is known as a red river. And you know the river was quarter. It's difficult.
As a hotel, we are also forced to close our doors for a period of 2 months.
A good roof is actually like having the best burglar-proof door.
For the residential homes is 28 gauge, that gauge, so that 2 gauge.
Join me, Timothy Otieno, and the entire Area Code crew as we come to a town near you.
The Area Code Show, proudly brought to you by Mabati Rolling Mills.
Get CoverMax. It's more than just a roof. It's color that lasts with advanced color technology. Ukiweka, umeweka. CoverMax, a quality product from MRM.
I make my Tuesday count by reading the Financial Standard. It helps me make much better and smarter financial decisions.
Setting the standard every day of the week. The Standard, Kenya's bold newspaper.
This is KTN News.
Welcome back. You're watching Morning Express. Thanks for staying with us. Right before the break, we're talking about the latest political developments in the country. So much focus on the meeting that is set to chart the way forward from the One Kenya Alliance in terms of their strategy going into 2022. So I'm joined in studio by James Gakui. I'd like your voice, add kindly to the ongoing discourse, because others might argue, just as Manyasi mentioned, a divided opposition might be the best for William Ruto when he goes into 2022. But speaking of going it alone, he's taken a strategy of talking to the individual regions and getting their issues and agendas as well. But what is the magic card while taking this route? Because we well know at the end of the day, the tribalization and balkanization that happens around tribes sort of is prominent more than issue-based politics.
Thank you, Rogers. What we need to understand is our political geography. And we have witnessed very well that if we have serious regions that actually feels that actually they must be in the limelight, then there are just about 5 number of them. This is Western, this is Nyasa, this is Rift Valley, and this is Central and Eastern. But we have other grey areas like Coast, Northeastern. It's only that Northeastern is a bit disadvantage of numbers, but Coast is not disadvantaged. So what matters is that as the game is on, I am telling you, William Ruto is only hiding his cards because politics is an issue to do with methodology. And I'm telling you for sure, at the end of the day, he will use the battle of unity within one Kenya is what will determine who will be the next president. I'm telling you, my good panelist has just stated very clear that the unity of one Kenya will what matter. Because I am telling you for sure, that particular one Kenya is very delicate as of now.
Okay. At
any time that the string will be loose, I'm telling you, then the politics will just give its kind of a color. The delicate area I told you earlier is area of issue to do with Musalia Mudavadi because of his backyard. There's no way that Murembe people today will reason anything else. They would like to see their man to be at the top. And if it is a negotiation between now one Kenya and Raila Odinga, then don't forget that once beaten, twice shy. And they are shy that, in fact, they have not seen the results there before. Kalonzo has tried twice, and he has not also seen a fruit at the end. Therefore, that's why they are calling it a very delicate route, and they are saying that in case they work together, there has to be conditions.
Okay.
There's no condition that can work in what we call memorandum. If today we are finding a situation where William Ruto and the head of state are not together today, and they are separated in the Camp 22, and therefore those other memorandum has not worked there before, and therefore there is no one that we can say that this one will be the original that will not break up. And my view to this is that the wisdom will be within the house of one Kenya. If they can hold their unity together to the end, then they will be the big fish. Because what will happen, they will determine in the runoff who will be the king. They will determine. But if they break at now, then the possibilities are that if Ruto gets one of them, either Kalonzo or Mudavadi, the game is done.
Okay.
If Raila too, he cannot be able to reach anywhere without them. So in this particular case, they are the people, and I can say in politics, if Okoa Kenya can be able to live united, they are the people to watch, and they carry the keys to the State House.
Okay, let me ask you this. Perhaps the presence of Kanini Kega, who is a Jubilee Member of Parliament and an ally, a close ally to President Uhuru Kenyatta, others were reading too much into it. What say you about his presence there? Does it speak of an impending coalition on the coalition?
What I can tell you for sure, not even Kanini Kega. At the point you are finding Gideon Moi in the presence of the one Kenya, it tells you there is no way you can distance Gideon Moi with Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Those are buddies, and they cannot be able to separate. They take it home. Okay. That whenever you see Gideon, the cards he's playing there are the cards that are not in any secret to the head of state. And that is it. So Kanini can be there, but Kanini is just Kanini, and probably he was just there just to create a perception. Okay. But he cannot take any big message there.
All right.
If there is somebody with a big message there, it is Gideon.
All right. Okay.
Not Kanini Kega.
Okay, let's speak to the man himself. Kasim Tandaza, perhaps as you add your voice, so much speculation after the Mombasa meeting, and perhaps you can clear out the air on what exactly transpired amongst these principals, because it seems from that meeting people were reading bad blood due to the lack of a handshake between some leaders. But what say you about the key issues that were discussed?
Well, I might not really say authoritatively about the issues discussed because I was not in that meeting. But I can authoritatively speak about issues which I know are on. One, It is unfortunate that even from Mheshimiwa Gakuya started saying what matters in this country in terms of politics is the Nyanza, Central, Rift Valley, and Western, and then he talked about others. Others here, he talked about Eastern and Coast. Yani Kenya na wenye Kenya na wale wengine. And well, it is unfortunate that that could be the hard reality, so to speak. But going forward, I don't think that is the way that we are going to do business anymore, especially as of course. But anyway, back to the topic of the day and your question which you asked about the State House meeting in Pasa. As the head of state, let's agree that he is the symbol of unity of this country. And any leader, the head of state, we should not really read malice, we should not read bad faith to it. I think some last month, the head of state met even with the deputy president, and he became a defection. President meeting his deputy. And remember, the people he was meeting, these are also leaders, they are leaders on their own right. They have deputy vice president, they have been vice deputy prime ministers. So certainly they have a lot. But to me, what matters most is the main issue here, 2022 general election. As one Kenya, as leaders, are we going to go as a united front or as divided? To me, I can answer this already. Whether we are going to have a one candidate or whether we are going to have several, and I think we, in one Kenya, we are still united in purpose. The one Kenya document that we are drafting, I can tell you for sure, it is not going to be specific that there must be so and so as a presidential candidate. We are looking at several scenarios, but going forward, I think what matters most in Kenya is.
Well, unfortunately, we seem to have lost him just briefly, but he'll be back on the line. Kasim Tandaza joining us from Lamu County, and is privy to the information amongst those principles as it comes to the One Kenya Alliance. But Manyasi, from where you sit, does President Uhuru Kenyatta sort of leaning towards a Raila presidency complicate the matrix for One Kenya Alliance? Well, what's your take on this? Because the Raila factor doesn't seem to be separated from One Kenya Alliance. They're tied at the hip. Well, what say you about this?
Yeah, that's that's an unfortunate bit for Raila Odinga because in his shoes, I'm sure he would have wished that he was strong enough to go it alone. But from what we are hearing and from what we are seeing, it's obvious, and probably that's partly why the president is keen on One Kenya Alliance joining up with Raila, because he knows that that is the easiest way to either create a win for them or at the very least, create a runoff. So ultimately, the president then, if he's then determined to see that his deputy doesn't see the presidency, then of course he will put a lot of emphasis and a lot of energy in ensuring that two things happen: that One Kenya Alliance sticks together, and two, that if possible, Raila Odinga and One Kenya Alliance join together into one ticket. So that is will be his greatest motivation. What is a bit of then concern will be how he makes sure that that happens. That will be a different question altogether, because you have a team of two, but this team of two, we have one team that already has competitors from within, and on the other hand, you have a Raila Odinga who probably might imagine that it's the only opportunity that he has to run for president at this point in time. Okay. Unless, of course, and that will be the easiest ride for the president, if Raila Odinga today was to decide that, guess what, I have run enough times, I do not have to run again, I do not have to be president of Kenya, I'm going to support one of the candidates that is nominated by One Kenya Alliance, that candidature will be extremely strong, and William Ruto would be very worried if that was to happen.
Okay, well noted. But what's your take on going it alone versus the coalition's route? We've seen some politicians moving away from the politics of positions and regions, sort of pushing for the bottom-up narrative that has sort of captured the imagination of Kenyans. So when it comes to that 50+1% in majority of counties, is it possible to go it alone, or coalitions are a necessary evil?
You know, ultimately, going it alone is a possibility, and I'm sure that's why the Deputy President has been pushing the narrative of bottom-up, because he wants to galvanize the country to a point where the aspect of tribe becomes less significant. That's what he's trying to do, and making sure that the people of Kenya capture the imagination that they can actually move in the same direction without tribe. However, the downside to it is that if that does not succeed, then ultimately he will also need to be supported by another person. And the way he's going to pick a running mate in this matter is what most of us are observing. Is he going to pick a running mate based on tribe, or is he going to pick a running mate who is a no one, who is not known, but who captures the aspiration of, example, the youth or the women, and say, this is the person that I'm going to run with outside of the big tribes, and say, this is the aspiration of Kenya. For example, if he does that, then the formation of the One Kenya Alliance and Raila together, the aspect of tribe might play a bigger role than the aspirations of saying that we want to be united and run as hustler nation. However, if he's going to pick a running mate who then galvanizes a certain tribe that coalesces around him, then obviously he will also go back to the aspect of tribe to be in a position to then aspire that tribe to support him 100% as he also moves with the narrative of the hustler nation. So whichever way you look at it, the aspect of tribe is very hard to ignore at this point in time. Okay. Kenyans have not moved away from tribe yet, and it just depends on how you're going to sell your cards at the end of the day.
Okay, well noted. Kasim Tandaza, I understand you're back on the line. As you had your voice on the ongoing One Kenya Alliance deliberations, let's talk about coastal parties, because just recently we saw the coastal parties signed a working agreement, a political agreement, and just last month, and then right now we've seen deliberations around the parties breaking ranks with the governor, Kilifi Governor Amason Kingi. I mean, is it that tough for a united front in this region going into the 2022 general election? What local intrigues are playing into this?
Well, just it has not been easier, but I can tell you it's getting better in terms of our unity at the coast. I think just been lamenting about how we are normally referred to as others, despite the fact that you are quite a large voting bloc with some unit of purpose. So we are getting there. But we are private to the fact that we have enemies within and enemies without. Coming from a history where people are coming to cost and getting a percentage of whatever what they want, they will certainly not want to see us united this time. But again, even from within, we've had situations where people have also benefited from personally, so from belonging to certain political parties and political groupings. But to me, going forward as a region, and I believe this will happen before the 2022 general election, is that you are going to have a united front with or without a particular political party. Because I think the most decisive point is talking about a political party from the coastal region. To me, this, I've said time again, is not a solution to our problem. What we actually need is leadership from the coast. In any case, there is no region, just in this country, which has one political party. Talk of Western, talk of Nyanza, talk of Central. There are several political parties. But out of that, a leader comes out where people believe that this can affect agendas on. And I think, to me, that has been my position. It remains my position. And we are working personally at my individual level. I'm working hard to see that at the end of the day, cost will not be part of others, but now it will be a region that also be able to come to the table and negotiate, because that is how benefits actually accrue to this country. If you don't have your person at the highest table, the roof would apart. This is what I can say you. For us, it can't be business. So as we are discussing One Kenya, and that's why I'm saying I want another explanation. Say, as we are discussing One Kenya, it is not a closed. So the hurry that we need to nominate a presidential candidate today or the next week is neither here nor there. We are cognizant of the fact that there are more regions, there are more other players who will come and support our ideologies of Kenya.
Okay. Yes. Okay, well noted, Kasim. Thanks for the info. So, Gakuya, from where you sit, I mean, it's all to do with regions. Let's talk about Mount Kenya region, because leaders of 7 Mount Kenya parties are set to meet today for 2022 unity talks. And on the agenda is unity of the region and political direction ahead of next year's polls. And this is an area where political pundits say the deputy president has made inroads. He's had a head start, quote unquote. So are you worried perhaps of the blowback from the Jubilee Reloaded, quote unquote, from these 7 Mount Kenya parties? And what if there's a presidential candidate from the central region? Does this in any way hamper your matrix?
Rogers, let me be very categorical on this. That I said there earlier, that our political party's democracy is at a very high bar, and therefore no single registered party can be denied to move out and seek votes from the public. That's quite in order. But in the case of matrix on how or which strategy these groups are going to gang together, then try to persuade Mount Kenya to join into their plan, I can tell you, is a game that I am not seeing any success ahead. And one thing is that if you just want to check who are these meeting together to come up with one big party to contend or to bring Mount Kenya together, then see them very well. There you are fighting TSP, you are fighting NAC Kenya, you are fighting for the PNU. These are parties that has not even brought a single person to parliament in the last parliament. And they were still in competition. And therefore, I will tell you very sure, even Moses Kuria and his party, he was lucky that actually when he was competing in Juja, he was anchoring himself under the roof of the deputy president. Today, if he feels that he's strong enough and he can be able to turn Mount Kenya into his way, let him garner for the presidency. Okay. Let him groom all these teams together. Let them come up with a presidential candidate. Let us meet them as an opposition in that particular area of Mount Kenya. Because Mount Kenya have decided to go their way, not because they don't have one of their own. We have many of their own. We have people like Peter Kenneth, we have like Moturi and others. But actually, it's a decision by the Mount Kenya that actually they have noticed of one of them for this particular time. They know where their destination is, and that is it. And I can tell you for sure, this is what you are going to expect to see at the end of the day. These parties will come, they will rally together, even though there are 20 number of them, but actually they will be restored. And there will be an issue in Central Mount Kenya.
So they're raising the political stake. I get that, but I mean, why there's so much clamor in the mountain?
There is many other ways of negotiating.
Okay.
But you cannot be able to stand to say that the UDA has no space in Mount Kenya, that we must go to an offers Mount Kenya party so that we come to bargain. No, what we are saying is we are the owners of UDA.
So do you envision the mountain speaking in one voice? Because there's no designated clear successor to President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is heading out of office. So this is why many argue that Mount Kenya right now is a swing vote, and that's why these leaders are pushing for unity in purpose, as Martha Karua said.
One is that, in fact, even the head of state, who most of the people could be waiting to see his signal, he has already indicated his signal.